I want you to picture two condos. Same building, same floor actually. Somewhere in Mississauga, could be Etobicoke, could be Burnaby, could be any mid-sized Canadian city you know. The first condo belongs to someone earning $110,000 a year. Walk in and you notice it immediately. 75-inch television on the wall. A sectional that probably cost more than some people's first cars. The kitchen has every gadget, the air fryer, the Nespresso machine, the blender that cost $400 and gets used twice a month. There's a closet full of Lululemon and Arc'teryx. A brand new truck in the parking spot downstairs. Payments running about $950 a month. This person checks their bank account on a Sunday night and feels a knot in their stomach. They have $800 left until next paycheck. If Rogers goes up again next month, they're not sure what they're cutting. The second condo is 3 doors down. This person earns $58,000 a year. Walk in and you notice space. A modest couch, a regular-sized TV, a kitchen with the tools that actually get used, one good jacket, not 5 mediocre ones, a used Honda in the parking lot paid off 2 years ago. This person opened their banking app this morning and felt nothing except mild satisfaction. They have 14 months of expenses saved. Their TFSA has $47,000 in it, invested in index ETFs, growing quietly every month. Same building, almost half the income, nearly 10 times the financial security. This isn't a story about luck. It isn't a story about privilege. It isn't even really a story about money. It's a story about something most Canadians earning good money have never been taught to see. And once you see it, you genuinely cannot unsee it. Here is what's actually happening in those two condos. The person earning $110,000 is running what I'd call a high-maintenance lifestyle. Every dollar they earn has already been allocated, not to savings, not to investments, not to freedom, but to the cost of maintaining the version of themselves they decided to present to the world. The truck payment, the subscriptions, the wardrobe refreshes every season. The restaurants, because after a long week of earning $110,000, they feel like they deserve it. And they do. That's the trap. The person earning $58,000 figured something out, maybe deliberately, maybe just through necessity, that most high earners never do. They figured out that there is a difference between lifestyle cost and life quality, and that in Canada right now, those two things have almost completely disconnected. You can have an extremely high-cost lifestyle with genuinely mediocre life quality, and you can have a genuinely excellent quality of life at a cost that leaves substantial margin every single month. Most Canadians are running the first version without ever questioning whether it's the one they actually chose. Let's talk about the first pattern that separates these two Canadians. The person earning $110,000 has subscriptions running in the background of their life like a slow leak in a roof. Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Spotify Family Plan, Apple One, YouTube Premium, a gym membership they use maybe 6 times a month, Sirius XM in the truck, Rogers Ignite TV package because it came bundled with the internet, a meal kit service they meant to cancel 3 months ago. Added up, most Canadians in this bracket are carrying $350 to $500 a month in recurring subscriptions. That's $4,200 to $6,000 a year. Every single one felt like a small decision at the time. None of them feel like much individually. Together they equal a car payment. The person earning $58,000 made a different call. Not because they're deprived, they still watch Netflix. But they did an audit. Every 3 months, they open their credit card statement and go line by line through recurring charges. Anything they haven't actively used gets cut, not because $12.99 is life-changing, because the habit of paying for things you don't use is the exact same habit that scales to furniture you don't need, cars you can't afford, and eventually a lifestyle that owns you instead of the other way around. The single biggest financial gap between these two Canadians isn't their rent. It isn't their groceries. It isn't even their subscriptions. It's the vehicle. In Canada right now, the average new vehicle payment is hovering around $800 to $1,000 a month. Add insurance, which in Ontario or BC runs $200 to $350 a month for a newer vehicle, and you're looking at $1,200 a month, $14,000 a year, to get from one place to another. The $110,000 earner has a truck that was $62,000 off the lot. They needed it, sort of. There have been maybe 4 occasions in the last 2 years where they actually needed a truck bed. Mostly it sits in the parking lot and costs them money while they sleep. The $58,000 earner drives a 2019 Civic they bought used for $14,000 3 years ago. It's paid off. Insurance runs $140 a month because it's older and modest. Total monthly vehicle cost, $140. The difference between these two decisions is $1,060 a month, not annually, monthly. That is $12,720 a year. Over 10 years, with that money invested in a TFSA at 7% annual return, that's approximately $175,000. One vehicle decision, $175,000. Nobody talks about this at the dealership. Real quick, if this is landing for you, hit subscribe. This is what Loonie Lab does every week. Real Canadian numbers, real behavioral patterns, no recycled American finance advice. Hit subscribe and I'll see you in the next one too. Okay, back to it. Here is the pattern that makes me genuinely frustrated on behalf of high-earning Canadians. The TFSA, the tax-free savings account, is one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available anywhere in the world. Not in Canada, anywhere. Zero tax on growth, zero tax on withdrawal. Contribution room that carries forward indefinitely. For someone who was 18 in 2009, the lifetime TFSA room right now is over $95,000. The person earning $58,000 maxes their TFSA every year. They started early, they've been consistent, and they now have $47,000 sitting in a low-cost index ETF growing tax-free. In 20 years at 7%, that $47,000 alone, without another dollar added, becomes approximately $181,000, tax-free every dollar. The person earning $110,000 opened a TFSA in 2019. They put $6,000 in it during COVID because they had nothing else to do. It's been sitting in a savings account earning 3% ever since. Current balance, $7,200. The gap between these two TFSAs is not an income gap. It's a priority gap. The $110,000 earner has the money. They have more of it than the $58,000 earner, but the $110,000 earner has allocated every dollar to the maintenance of a lifestyle before a single dollar reaches the TFSA. The $58,000 earner treats the TFSA contribution like a bill. It gets paid first. Everything else gets what's left. That one behavioral difference, pay yourself first versus pay yourself last, is responsible for more wealth inequality between Canadians of similar income than any other single factor. Walk through the $110,000 earner's condo again and notice something. Almost nothing in there is more than 3 years old. The phone, upgraded last fall because the new one had a better camera. The laptop, replaced 18 months ago because it was getting slow. The TV, bought 2 years ago to replace one that worked perfectly but wasn't 4K. The couch, bought last year because they redecorated. The AirPods, third pair. The coffee machine, second one. The first was fine, but this one grinds its own beans. In isolation, each of these decisions is completely defensible. Individually, they feel minor, but there's a pattern underneath all of them that is costing this person an extraordinary amount of money without them ever feeling it. They upgrade things that work. The $58,000 earner has a 6-year-old MacBook that runs perfectly. A phone they've had for 4 years, a couch they've had since they moved in, a coffee maker that cost $40 and makes excellent coffee every morning. They operate by a simple rule that most people have never consciously adopted. If it works, it stays. Boredom is not a reason to replace something. A newer model existing is not a reason to replace something. Your colleague getting a newer version is definitely not a reason. In Canada, where the cost of everything from groceries to housing has compounded relentlessly over the last 4 years, this rule is not just financially sensible. It is a form of financial self-defense. This one is the hardest to talk about because it involves other people. The $110,000 earner spends a significant portion of their money on what I'd call social maintenance spending. The dinners out with the work group where the bill gets split and it's $140 a person including tip. The golf membership because that's what people at their income level do. The cottage weekend where the expectation is you bring good wine and nice food. The birthday dinners, the engagement parties, the bachelor weekends in Nashville that cost $1,800 once you add flights and hotels. Every individual event feels important. Some of them are genuinely meaningful. But cumulatively, they add up to thousands of dollars a month spent on social performance rather than genuine connection. The $58,000 earner has friends too. They have a full social life, but they made peace with something that most high earners haven't. They don't need to perform their income level to people who are performing theirs right back. They host dinners at home. They suggest the restaurant where the bill is $40, not $140. They skip the Nashville bachelor trip and do something genuinely meaningful for their friend instead. They own exactly one good bottle of wine and bring it to the cottage rather than trying to outdo everyone. And here is the uncomfortable truth about the social spending trap in Canada. The people you are trying to impress at those expensive dinners are usually doing the exact same thing. They are spending money they don't really have to maintain an image in front of people who are doing the same. The whole performance is running on debt and anxiety, and almost nobody talks about what it's actually costing them. Here is why this hits harder in Canada right now than it ever has before. The cost of the baseline Canadian life has compounded brutally since 2020. Groceries up over 20%. Insurance creeping up every renewal. Housing costs at historical extremes in most major markets. The general cost of staying put has increased faster than most incomes have grown. In that environment, a high-maintenance lifestyle doesn't just cost more than it used to. It crowds out the margin that used to exist even for moderate spenders. The $110,000 earner in 2019 probably had $1,500 left over every month after everything. Today, with the same lifestyle inflated by 4 years of cost increases, that same person might have $300 or nothing. The $58,000 earner in a low-cost lifestyle felt the same inflation, but because their spending was already intentional and lean, the impact was manageable. Their margin shrank, but didn't disappear. This is the part of the Canadian financial conversation that nobody is having loudly enough. Inflation doesn't hit everyone equally. It hits high-maintenance lifestyles hardest because there are more line items for it to attack. So what did the $58,000 earner figure out that the $110,000 earner hasn't? It's not a secret. It's not a hack. It's not a budgeting spreadsheet or a side hustle. They figured out that most consumption doesn't actually improve your life, not in any lasting way. The research on this is remarkably consistent. Beyond a baseline of genuine comfort and security, additional spending contributes almost nothing to sustained happiness or life satisfaction. The new couch feels exciting for about 3 weeks, and then it's just the couch. The new truck feels incredible for a month, and then it's just how you get to work. The new phone feels significant for a few days, and then it's just a phone. Meanwhile, the money that didn't go toward the couch, the truck, and the phone is sitting in a TFSA, compounding quietly toward something that does produce lasting satisfaction. Freedom, security, options. The ability to say no to the job that's making you miserable. The ability to take 6 months off if your family needs you. The ability to retire 5 years earlier than everyone who earns twice as much as you. That is what the $58,000 earner is actually building, while the $110,000 earner is refreshing their banking app with a knot in their stomach on Sunday night. Here's the thing about those two condos. They're not really about the condos. They're about two completely different answers to the question that every Canadian is quietly asking right now, whether they admit it or not. What is money actually for? One person answered that question with stuff, with the appearance of success, with a lifestyle that looks impressive from the outside and feels like quicksand from the inside. The other person answered it with margin, with options, with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your life doesn't collapse if something goes wrong. Both of these people exist in your building, your office, your neighborhood. One of them is stressed in a way they can't fully explain. The other one seems inexplicably calm for someone who earns less than you. Now you know why. Which condo are you living in right now? Drop your honest answer in the comments. No numbers needed, just which person resonated with you. If Loonie Lab is giving you the Canadian financial perspective you haven't found anywhere else, hit subscribe. Every week we run the numbers and the stories most Canadians are too busy or too proud to sit with. I'll see you in the next one.